I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the allegations of Russian war crimes in Busha. We could start there. I know you've got a lot to say about that, and also the Kramatorsk railway station. I
Yeah.
think that the facts and the evidence that we've already seen from that massacre are even more damning for the official Ukrainian narrative than what we've seen come out of Busha already, and that's partially due to what I think you're going to talk about, the fact that the evidence was destroyed in Busha. So what are your thoughts on both of these massive war crimes allegations?
As a UN weapons inspector, my job was to account for all of Iraq's missiles. That included the ones they fired against Israel, the ones they fired against the Gulf Arab states, and the over 100 missiles that they blew up and buried underground. I had to be a forensic investigator, go in and dig these missiles up, and then look at all the serial numbers and match serial numbers of component parts to a missile airframe, to an overall serial number, to a contract that led back to a Russian factory called Votkinsk, where these missiles were built. Missiles are produced, accounted for, shipped, received, organized, and turned over to a missile storage unit that's linked to an operational unit that has records using that serial number to track it all throughout, that determine when it's maintained, when it's released for operational use, and when it's expended, because it has to be accounted for as a round of ammunition. And the Iraqis use the exact same accounting system that the Russians trained them to use, which is the one the Ukrainians use. So having said that, I looked at the videotape. All I had to do is look at the serial number and said, that's the only evidence you need, ladies and gentlemen, right there. Stop. We don't need to say any other word. That serial number right there will tell you who owned the missile. And if you owned the missile, you fired the missile. So now, who owned the missile? And until the Russian government releases all the data that I just told you, I can't say with 100% certain. But what I can say is that missiles are shipped from Votkinsk in lot batches. And that means that they have consecutive serial numbers. So if I know that Ukraine fired a missile with the serial number Shah 91, which is 91 being the year of production, and then they have next three digits, I think it's 579, but whatever the photo shows, it shows.
Mm-hmm.
But if they fired a missile that was Shah 91 568, and then they fired a missile that was Shah 91 831, and now we find a missile in between, you can bet a dime to a dollar that missile is from the same lot that was received by the Ukrainian army and in possession of the Ukrainian army. But we also have some other information, because when the Tochka U, first of all, the Tochka U is no longer in the Russian military inventory. They retired it in 2019. Now people say, well, we've seen photographs of them in Belarus in 2021. Yeah, those were Belarusian Tochka U's participating in a joint exercise with the Russian military. But the Russians don't have it. They don't use it. They don't operate it. When the missile's fired, it's a single stage with a booster and a separating warhead. So the missile takes off, goes on its nice little ballistic trajectory, and at some point in time, the warhead separates. Usually after power, the missile has lost power, vented, stopped, because it depends on its range. The missile can burn for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want the longest range, you fire it so you get max burn. But if you want to go a shorter range, you fire it, and then based upon the timer, it'll vent. That is, there's little ports on the side that vent it out, and you lose all propulsion, and it stops, and then you separate your warhead, and it lands where it's supposed to land. So when that happens, the booster then falls to the ground, generally on the same trajectory that it was launched. A little bit of wobble factor. So, if it hits, if it's not straight, it might be a little bit this way, but generally you know the direction it came from, so you can shoot a reverse azimuth. Standard artillery stuff. Reverse azimuth, and now you see the direction it came from, built in, a standard deviation, and you know where it came from. And when all that leads directly back to territory that's only controlled by the Ukrainian government, it leads you to believe that the Ukrainian government launched this missile. So even if we don't have the actual disposition records with the serial number, trace, all that stuff, all the available forensic data strongly suggests that the Ukrainians fired. Both the United States and Russia have every radar in the world working right now. I can tell you two things with absolute certainty. The United States government knows exactly where this missile was launched from. So do the Russians. Now, I can understand why the Russians may not want to give away this capability. They're in an active war zone. They may not want to give away something. But the United States, can you imagine? I mean, when we had photographs of the Russian missiles in Cuba, we released them. Mm-hmm. When we had an audio tape of the Russian pilot talking about shooting down Korean Airline 007, we released it. So here we are. We have a chance to actually nail the Russians to the cross. We could crucify them right now. if we just release the radar data, which isn't that sensitive, but we're not. Why? Because the radar data shows that the Ukrainians launched the missile. So now the United States is complicit in the cover-up, which again, under international, under the standards set by the Nuremberg tribunals, makes us complicit in a crime against peace, a crime against humanity. People could think it's just propaganda. We talked about psychological operations, but when you're covering up a crime, you become the criminal. And we're covering up a crime right now. Now, the missile, I will tell you, I have a hard time believing that the Ukrainians fired a missile that they intended to hit a train station full of civilians. What I don't have a hard time believing is that Ukrainians fired a missile that was supposed to hit Donetsk, because they've been firing Tochka-U's at Donetsk for some time now. And if you draw a line from where it was launched to where it was going, it's Donetsk. The Ukrainians either inputted the wrong stuff or the missile malfunctioned. I believe something went wrong. And the Ukrainians should man up. Rather than lying about this, man up and say, this is a horrible, horrible reality of war. Something bad happened. And guess what? In war, bad things happen. I was involved in a war where we dropped 2 bombs on a air raid shelter in downtown Baghdad and boiled 460 civilians to death. Am I proud of this? No, I'm not proud of this. Am I going to commit suicide over this? No. It's war. We didn't mean to do it. It happened. And that's just a tragic outcome when nations decide to send military forces for the purpose of killing one another.